On today's episode, we're in September 1983 at the Frankfurt Motor Show, where Volkswagen reveals the Golf Mk2, a car that immediately feels less like a replacement and more like a statement. But before that moment, the segment already had two very different contenders. An Italian hatchback, recently revised and improved, trying to fix its weaknesses, and a Japanese alternative, lighter, simpler, and built around a completely different philosophy. Both were competitive, both made sense, until Volkswagen arrived and quietly raised the standard. So the question is this: were they ever really competing on the same level? This is Four Wheels and Fuel. Let's find out.
Forte la nostra Ritmo, papà?
Non tutti lo sanno, ma la Ritmo è un diavolo di macchina. Ritmo, il diavolo e l'acqua santa.
Fiat Ritmo S. In October 1982, Fiat did something its competitors hadn't expected. They looked at the Ritmo, a car that had been selling since 1978, that had been quietly criticized for its unconventional appearance, its bouncy ride, and the gearbox road testers had described in terms usually reserved for agricultural equipment. And they fixed it. Not replaced it, fixed it. The facelift gave the Ritmo a more conventional front end, with a proper grille and integrated headlights that sat cleanly within the body rather than intersecting the bumper. The changes weren't purely cosmetic. The chassis was also revised, shedding approximately 70 kilograms, improving both efficiency and responsiveness. Weight reduction at this level had a noticeable effect on how the car behaved, particularly in urban driving and low-speed maneuvers. It wasn't a new car, it was a better one. The Ritmo had been front-wheel drive from the beginning, a progressive decision in 1978, and by 1983, simply the correct layout for the segment. The 85S produced 82 brake horsepower and 119 Newton-meters from its 1.5-litre inline-4 through a 5-speed manual, with some markets also offering a 3-speed automatic option. Weighing around 880 kilograms, it reached 60 miles per hour in about 11.5 seconds and topped out at 103 miles per hour, with fuel consumption around 36 miles per gallon. On the road, the improvements were noticeable but not transformative. The lighter chassis gave it slightly more agility, particularly in tighter corners, but the ride remained characteristically lively. Over uneven surfaces, the suspension still struggled to fully settle, creating a sense of constant motion rather than controlled compliance. The steering was lighter than before, though still lacking the precision and feedback expected by German buyers at the time. The interior remained the Ritmo's weakest point. Build quality was inconsistent, with switchgear that felt assembled with enthusiasm rather than precision. Materials wore more quickly than rivals, and panel fitment varied from car to car. Long-term durability was not its strength, and this became increasingly apparent as mileage accumulated. It sold regardless. Fiat's domestic market absorbed large numbers, and in southern Europe, the Ritmo retained genuine popularity due to its practicality and affordability. But it had never quite become the Golf. It had arrived with similar intentions and never fully delivered on them. With the facelift applied and the weight reduced, it was closer than it had ever been. Just not close enough.
「一番最初に私を乗せて」
と彼女は言った。とうとう買った魅力のプライススターレットスペシャル。僕感激です。トヨタオートへ。
Toyota Starlet KP60. While Fiat was building a front-wheel drive hatchback, Toyota was doing something considerably more contrarian. The Starlet KP60 was rear-wheel drive. In 1983, when every credible small car in Europe had reached the same engineering conclusion, Toyota's smallest car was still sending power to the back wheels. This was either stubborn conservatism or engineering confidence, possibly both. At 765 kilograms, the Starlet's weight was its defining advantage. Lighter than the Ritmo and significantly lighter than what the Golf was about to become. That low mass influenced everything, from acceleration to braking to fuel efficiency. The 1.3-litre 4K inline-4 produced 64 brake horsepower and 91 Newton-meters through a 4-speed manual, with a 3-speed automatic available in some markets. It reached 60 miles per hour in around 13.0 seconds and topped out at 93 miles per hour, while returning approximately 38 miles per gallon. On paper, nothing to alarm anyone. In a car park on a dry morning, the Starlet didn't alarm anyone either. It was small, modest, cheerfully honest about what it was. The proportions were compact, the design simple, and the interior reflected the same philosophy. Materials were basic, the layout straightforward, and there was little attempt to impress beyond functionality. Everything was there for a reason, and very little beyond that. If you enjoy the stories on Four Wheels and Fuel, you can support the channel by buying me a coffee. Just click the link on the screen or scan the QR code. It helps keep these nostalgic car stories alive. Let's continue. What the Starlet delivered was Toyota's consistent promise: reliability. The 4K engine was simple, understressed, and known for long-term durability. It started in temperatures that challenged European equivalents. The gearbox maintained its feel over time, showing little degradation even after extended use. Electrical systems remained consistent, avoiding the intermittent faults that were common in some competitors. And then there was the driving experience. That rear-wheel drive layout, often marked against it in European reviews, revealed its strengths on the right road. The car was light enough and balanced well enough to feel responsive, particularly at moderate speeds. Where front-wheel drive rivals tended to push wide under load, the Starlet remained more neutral, offering a level of engagement that wasn't expected at this price point. It wasn't fast, it wasn't refined, but it was predictable, durable, and quietly capable in ways that mattered over time. It wasn't trying to beat the Golf. It knew better. Sold until 1985 in Europe, before being replaced by a front-wheel drive successor, the Starlet had already made its point. Do you love classic American cars? From big V8 muscle to forgotten American icons? Then you'll want to check out our sister channel, 4 Wheels and Fuel USA. After this video, of course. The link is in the description.
The new jumbo-sized Volkswagen Golf. It has a 29% larger trunk for loads, with 13% more passenger space. The new Golf is much faster, with a Porsche-like rear axle to improve load holding. It also has a 3-year anti-corrosion guarantee and a stainless steel exhaust. But the strongest reason for driving it is it's the toughest, most reliable Volkswagen we've ever built. New Golf from Volkswagen.
Volkswagen Golf Mk2, Frankfurt, September 1983. The Golf Mk2 arrives, and the segment it had effectively defined in 1974 and watched every European manufacturer attempt to replicate for nearly a decade became its again without argument. The original Golf had been a Giugiaro-designed revelation, a front-wheel drive hatchback that reset expectations for what a small family car could be. Compact, efficient, and intelligently packaged. The Mk2 was not a reinvention, it was a refinement, executed with enough confidence to make the original feel like an early draft of the same idea. The changes were measurable: 75mm more wheelbase, 180mm more length, 55mm wider, approximately 120 kilograms heavier. But those numbers didn't exist in isolation. The longer wheelbase improved ride stability. The increased width contributed to better cornering balance. The added mass combined with a more rigid structure enhanced overall refinement. Bigger in every direction, and in every direction more resolved. The 1.8 GL produced 90 brake horsepower and 145 Newton-meters through a 5-speed manual, with a 3-speed automatic available depending on market. At around 900 kilograms, it reached 60 miles per hour in approximately 10.0 seconds and continued to a top speed of 111 miles per hour, while returning roughly 37 miles per gallon. Against the Ritmo's 82 brake horsepower and the Starlet's 64 brake horsepower, the Golf had a clear performance advantage. But more importantly, it had the structure and engineering to use that performance effectively. On the road, the difference was immediate. The Golf was quieter than the Ritmo, significantly so, due in part to improved sound insulation and tighter body construction. The chassis felt more solid, resisting flex under load and maintaining composure over uneven surfaces. The suspension was calibrated with precision, balancing comfort and control without leaning too heavily toward either. The interior reinforced that impression. Materials were of higher quality, assembly was consistent, and the layout was clear and logical. Controls operated with a precision that made rivals feel less refined. The seats provided proper support over long distances, and visibility remained a strength, contributing to overall ease of use. This wasn't innovation in the dramatic sense, it was execution. 6.3 million Mk2 Golfs were built between 1983 and 1992. Throughout that period, every manufacturer in the segment measured themselves against it. They studied what Volkswagen had done differently, and more importantly, what it had done better. Some eventually closed the gap, but by the time they did, the Golf had already moved on. Three hatchbacks, three very different arguments. The Ritmo made the case that a good idea, properly revised, deserved another chance. The Starlet made the case that rear-wheel drive in the right hands still had a point. And the Golf Mk2 made no case at all. It simply arrived, set the standard, and waited for everyone else to meet it. Was there ever a car in this segment that genuinely challenged the Golf on its own terms? Tell us in the comments. If you want to support the channel, you can buy me a coffee. The link is in the description. And on that bombshell, this is Four Wheels and Fuel. See you next time.